What I could see here is we have a seafood linguine pasta. And those of you who know me, I really love pasta. I love pastas. So I think I'm really going to enjoy this. It looks really good. And it smells really good.
It smells amazing.
So I see we have like some calamari, some mussels,
that real
bell peppers. Yes, so let's dive in.
With a tomato-based sauce, people.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So we were just informed that it was sauteed with white wine. So I'm excited to try it.
A lot of the culture and the history of Kingston resides right here in downtown Kingston, traditionally and historically. But you'll hear on the music tour, even in the murals today, you'll hear about some of the greats that came out of downtown Kingston. Also, very importantly, what we're trying to do is about place making. So that's why you see the murals, but it's also about the people. So we're trying to invest in the people. We're trying to invest in the creatives behind our culture.
I can't wait to try this. It smells really good.
That's what he said.
I'm not really a tuna fan, but this is
Me neither, but this slapping. It's slapping, yo.
Not a big eater, so I am chocolate already.
I'm boxed.
This is good.
Chocolate already. But yeah,
Can we take the rest of our samples to go? Like, just making sure.
I mean, we're still within Voyan, so should I jump across?
What do you mean?
You're supposed to make the sound.
majority. Who run the vibes a majority.
What I could see here is we have a seafood linguine pasta. And those of you who know me, I really love pasta. I love pastas. So I think I'm really going to enjoy this. It looks really good. And it smells really good.
It smells amazing.
So I see we have like some calamari, some mussels,
That real
bell peppers. Yes, so let's dive in.
With a tomato-based sauce, people.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So we were just informed that it was sauteed with white wine. So I'm excited to try it.
This Independence, St. Lucia, Devant Ensemble. Join us as we celebrate 47 years of independence under the theme Devant Ensemble, nourishing our people, strengthening our nation. The celebrations kick off with the Independence Battle Relay Launch and the National Awards of Excellence on January 28th, followed by the 44th National Sports Awards on the 14th of February. On the 20th of February, lift your spirit at the Praise and Worship Ecumenical Service. Wear your pride on National Colors Day and explore opportunities at the St. Lucia Independence Business Expo, which runs till the 21st. On Saturday 21st, don't miss the official flag raising ceremony and fireworks display in the capital. Then, on Independence Day, Sunday, February 22nd, all roads lead to the Meatful Playing Field for a full day of national celebration. The Military Parade, National Independence Rally, and Independence Showcase. Take in the Seafood Festival at the Castries Fisheries and the high-energy Independence Drags at the Basin Viewfort. Plus, take part in National Service Day and the Investiture Ceremony as we honor service and nationhood. Celebrate who we are. Celebrate together. For schedules, highlights, and updates, follow at 758 Independence on social media. St. Lucia at 47. Devant Ensemble.
Culture, passion, unity. Caribbean, we are the majority. The majority. Who run the vibes? A 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 majority.
A lot of the culture and the history of Kingston resides right here in downtown Kingston, traditionally and historically. But you'll hear on the music tour, even in the murals today, you'll hear about some of the greats that came out of downtown Kingston. Also, very importantly, what we're trying to do is about placemaking. So that's why you see the murals, but it's also about the people. So we're trying to invest in the people. We're trying to invest in the creatives behind our culture.
Overcoming every obstacle in my way. Blood, sweat, tears, triumph, adversity. The Father give me strength so I could find my way. So what do I say? We tell them go hard or go home. We ain't come to play. We ain't going home. I tell you we here to stay. I tell you go hard or go home. We ain't come to play. We ain't going home. I tell you we here to stay. Feel like giving it up. Giving the people hope so we can't stop. I tell you, show it, show it, show them what you are. Show them at 2 minutes. Show them you a star. I tell you, show it, show them what you are. Show them at 2 minutes. Show them you a star. Pushing limits every day so they'll know my name. And failure is a lesson, we gonna rise again. Never staying down the top is the only game. So what do we say? We tell them go hard or go home. We ain't come to play. We ain't going home. I tell you we here to stay. I tell you go hard or go home. We ain't come to play. We ain't going home. I tell you we here to stay. Feel like giving up. Going till me can walk on me heart stop. Cause every night the party we mash it up. Giving the people hope so we can't stop. I tell you show it, show them what you are. Show them that 2 minutes. Show them you a star. I tell you show them what you are. Show them that 2 minutes. Show them you a star.
Culture, passion, unity, Caribbean, we are the majority. The majority, who run the vibes, 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 the majority.
So, might the lawyer need to come out?
Yeah, so I'm asking, so in that scenario,
If you had more than 15 grams, you were charged for possession with intent to supply. Anybody who had more than 15 grams, and I'm sure the majority of the people in the room can appreciate what 15 grams is, it's not very much. If you had 15 grams of cannabis before 2021 and you were arrested for the cannabis, they didn't charge you possession. They charged you possession with intent to supply.
See, if I smoke big posts, rats, hot tea, rats. If I smoke a hot tea, because I'm in pain, I'm self-medicating. I'm not saying.
Grown Folks Only Podcast.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Grown Folks Only Podcast. We have a very riveting episode for you this evening. Our topic tonight is cannabis. With me, I have Phil and Dylan from the RSA. And we're going to have a conversation about what this authority is and further stretch a couple topics on cannabis so that the public can be educated on everything. So, Dylan, can you give us a little bit of information as to what the RSA is about? What do you guys do?
So the RSA is the newest statutory body that's been formed.
Okay.
We were created in 2024. We have about 13 staff as of now, and we are tasked with the review of regimes for substances that should be regulated and the development of the legislation for these substances. So cannabis is the first one, so we've been called the Cannabis Authority, but we're a lot more than that. So we also deal with radioactive material, we also will be dealing with alcohol, we'll also be dealing with petroleum, toxic chemicals and pesticides, possibly tobacco, possibly psilocybin. So any other substance that the administration believes we should regulate.
Okay. And what is your role per se in this association?
So I'm the CEO.
You're the
Been
CEO.
for the past year.
All right. Okay. Nice.
It's a government organization or?
Yes, it is. It's a statutory body.
Statutory body, which you're a CEO. And RSA stands for Regulatory
Regulated Substances Authority. So all of the regulated substances.
Okay, all right. Does that include Viagra?
Not yet, unless you think it should. You can write to the Prime Minister. Let the Prime Minister know that you have some concerns about Viagra. You've had some mishaps maybe in the past, and you think it should be regulated, and we'll consider that.
I read a Valentine's Day already, but I have no control.
You have some palpitations.
Make sure you are healthy enough for sexual activity. But the first thing people think when they think regulated substance is cannabis. But it's very interesting to know that under that umbrella falls radioactive substances.
Yes, so we are in the process of refining the legislation for that as well. So
refining uranium, nice. Okay.
Not enriching.
Don't come fast.
Yes. We don't want to be in that category. So, So Phil, talk to me. What is your position? What is your role? What do you think about the inception of this authority? Do you think it would be something beneficial for the public? Do you think it might hinder movement or movement forward?
All right, thank you for that. I appreciate the opportunity to be here and have this discourse. I think it's needed. The conversation is needed.
Okay.
My role at the RSA is the PR consultant.
Okay.
So these types of things and what goes on the socials and how the public perceives us is really falls within my mandate. And man, I think, and I shared this with Dylan privately, but I think the RSA needed to happen a long time ago. And it is needed. I see it as a needed statutory organization for the country. And even at the way it is considered and the way it is going to run its operations, there's very little that has not been considered. And I think it's going to be a very rigorous regime and a very structured operation. And I'm honestly looking forward to seeing it. Even if I wasn't part of it, I would be happy just to be a bystander and just see, this is happening for the country. And I get to see this in my lifetime.
That's interesting. So like Dylan said, for now, the main thing that you're dealing with is cannabis, correct?
Cannabis and radiation.
Cannabis and radiation.
Yeah.
And they're not connected, I hope not. So
Well, you may not realize, but in many instances they are actually.
They are.
So some countries, if you're going to export cannabis to these countries, they will say to you it has to be irradiated to ensure there's no mold, no pathogens, etc. So if you're going to export cannabis, for example, to Canada, it can't get into Canada unless you can provide a certificate to show that that's been irradiated.
Okay.
Radiated or sterilized?
No, you use
X-ray?
radiation.
Like an X-ray level or?
So there's various applications for radiation. So radiation can kill pathogens. It depends on the amount of radioactivity that you apply to the product. But, so I can take you down a whole rabbit hole.
I've been down many rabbit holes. So I figure in that situation, you want to radiate it enough to
remove any
extinguish any living substances or break down any without leaving any traces of radiation where the user.
Correct. But it will not disturb the terpenes themselves or the actual cannabinoids on the product.
Okay.
So tell me a little bit more about cannabinoids. How does it work in your body?
I can take you down another rabbit hole. All right. So the body has a system that we've only about 7 years ago found out called the endocannabinoid system. So before they thought that they were just your digestive system, your respiratory system, it was limited. So that's why the majority of doctors never really learned about cannabis because they learned about these other systems. Somewhere in the last 15 years or so, we found out that the body has another system called the endocannabinoid system. So that system has receptors throughout the body and actually produces cannabinoids. So right now, your body is producing trace cannabinoids. That helps with regulating your mood, regulating your sleep, regulating your appetite. All of these things are part of your endocannabinoid system.
So it's like a sub-branch of the endocrine system.
Correct. So that's why when you take cannabis, a lot of these same things are impacted. That's why you get the munchies. That's why you start to feel lethargic. That's why, because it's tied into these same things. So taking the cannabis will cause some of the cannabinoids in the cannabis to bind within receptors that you already have in your body. Most of the receptors in the brain bind with THC, but they also bind with other receptors, CBN, CBG, CBD, THCV. There's over 1,000
My
cannabis.
brother, I know the alphabets, you're using a lot of things, but the average person, that's a different kind of rabbit hole there. Now, my thing is, right, as a medical science person, the body is always in homogeneity or a balancing act where it's giving something to take in something. If you push too much in one direction, you end up with unknown side effects, like you said, the munchies, weight loss. Are we sure? What has changed? Because I remember you saying a little earlier that it's something that should have been in a long time making. So what has changed with the attitude in the local zeitgeist or local, what you call culture, for us to start accepting something that for years they've been telling us it's bad for you, you shouldn't do this, and have a certain stigma attached to it?
I'll take that question. I'll give you a simple answer from my end of things. Everything can be abused.
Correct.
All right? From food to water, if you take too much of something, you will have an effect. Now, the the reason why a lot of things are put on the illegal list is because it has the, what's the word for it? It has the chance of becoming something that someone can abuse. With, like you were talking about, the cannabinoids, I found this out just recently, that the cannabinoids affect your pain receptors like painkillers.
You just found that out?
No, I literally did not know. Reason being, I had an epidural done, and they said it was supposed to take 46 hours to wear off. By an hour and a half, I was in excruciating pain after the surgery, and then they had to give me some more medication. And then another friend of mine had a C-section, and right before they were about to put her down, the doctor looked at her lips and was like, "Do you smoke?" And she's like, "Yeah." He's like, "How often?" He's like, "Every day." He's like, "Okay." He left and he came back with a bigger needle. And after he explained that the receptors...
There might be some resistance.
Yeah, because if you smoke, it's like you're hitting something, so the receptors basically have a callus. So you need more to affect it. So going to it being bad for you is more protecting us from abuse and protecting children, because you're not supposed to, or you should not smoke under 25, because your brain hasn't fully developed, and it can affect your brain development in certain ways. You can become dependent for sleeping and different things like that.
Like anything else.
So I have a challenge with the general reference to consumption of cannabis as smoking.
Mm-hmm.
So we've come to always think of cannabis as smoking because that's what we see. So you can tell for a fact that person is consuming cannabis because you see, but there's tons of means of administering cannabis to somebody. So there's creams, there's tinctures, there's. So when we speak of consuming cannabis, right now, the majority of the young people aren't smoking as much anymore. They're taking edibles, which we reckon.
Really?
Yeah, there's more young persons who want to take edibles than persons smoking. So it's a conversation on not just the issue with people smoking cannabis, but the general consumption of cannabis and how you should treat the risks of cannabis consumption generally. So that's something I like to always make sure we chime in on.
Okay, so
But
again,
that's
back to my
the
question.
public stigma of cannabis. You're
Yeah,
right.
it's just
That
smoking.
it's just always smoking it.
So what has really changed for them to try to regulate it and introduce it into the public?
I don't think anything has changed per se. So there has been a level of hypocrisy throughout the Caribbean for years.
Uh-huh.
And we have just gotten to a point where some persons who were telling us to say it was not good are now okay for us saying it's actually not
You're not
that
even
bad.
talking about Big Brother to the
So-
north of us.
So you've gotten to a point where you were told it was the devil's lettuce, it was, all the other names that they call it, and all of a sudden they're now like, maybe it's not horrible. And you have mothers who would say that they hated anything to do with cannabis, and they knew their sons smoked. They knew their sons had edibles, but they couldn't go out in public and say, well, my kids do it, and my kids are fine, and my kids are scholars, because they would be lepers in society. So they would be like, oh, I'm completely against cannabis. They know that their children consume cannabis. So we've just gotten to a point where in even our society, 1 in 5 persons consumes cannabis within at least once a month in St. Lucia. There are a lot of us in this room. So let's start doing some math. At least once a month is consuming cannabis. So you go into a room in any space with your executives and professionals and persons sitting down there, but 1 in 5 of them is consuming cannabis monthly.
I do not think that when I go into the board meetings or...
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
These are the same persons who are now in a professional space who can say that my mother didn't want to let people know that I smoked. And I still want to let people know that I consume. But if we have the conversation, I'm not going to say no to the legislation, because I know that from the time I was 12, I was on the block in the Mung and I was doing my thing. Now I'm no longer on the block in the Mung, but all the guys in the Mung know me and see me passing with my shoes and they know, but it used to do. So you've just gone to a point where these people are now in different positions and it's no longer their parents saying what they can and can't do.
I think with the destigmatization of it over the years has allowed the opportunity for us to do the research that's necessary to be able to prove these things, because you have different religious sects who have been saying so for a while, but saying so and then proving so with science is a completely different thing. And now we are at a point where we have scientific evidence, recent scientific evidence that can back up these claims and not just saying, it's good for this, it's good for that, it's good for sleeping, it's good for anxiety, it's good for just relaxation and so on. But there's science to back it up. And now we can treat it with a medicinal approach and treat it and diagnose different things and apply and administer it like for lack of a better word, like a drug. So this is something that's assisting.
In addition to the fact that cannabis has become more of a risk. So the cannabis we knew of growing up, you may not have known the THC percentage or whatnot, but all of us can accept that what you get right now is stronger.
I beg to differ in certain ways. But
What the average person who may have been consuming from then is different to the uninitiated now. The person who's getting initiated with cannabis right now is taking a stronger strain than the person who's getting initiated cannabis 30 years ago. That's the reality. So, because everybody's chasing that additional hype, when you started off with cannabis back in the 80s, you would have had landrace strains that was somewhere in the range of 16 to 18% THC. That was our landrace strains. Our landrace strains now are 25 to 27% THC. That's what's happening in the space.
Now,
so that's what I think is more of a reason for us to regulate, because there's more of a risk now dealing with the cannabis product that's on the streets.
Now I will. So what you said there is true in terms of the THC, but with some of the other factors of it, CBD and all the rest of them, I think it has dropped.
Yes.
Because I remember back in the day where guys would smoke and their eyes would be as red as that pillow, right? And you would get a buzz. And now you smoke and you get the euphoric high, but you don't get the heart racing. You don't get that because the other chemicals that affect the dilation of your blood vessels and whatnot are not high in them anymore. So it's more that they've been bred to have the euphoric, nostalgic sort of high.
Chasing the high.
But the medicinal part of it has gone down because back in the day, I remember guys would roll a joint. And if you didn't put a roach, what they call it back in the day, in the end of it, you'd have to cut the end of that joint every so often. And a lot of weed smokers then had black lips because the gum and the tar in it, which was also beneficial, which was they would use to make the tinctures back then properly and everything, are not there anymore. They've bred it out of it. So now you could smoke a joint without even worrying. And there's some people now that I know from good grounds, like y'all said, you would be surprised who smokes. You would see some young ladies, you'd see some young men that look prim and proper, and they would outsmoke anybody or outconsume anybody that is a top tier or whatever it is. You know, just for speaking. You're going to ask something.
I was going to say the view of the person who smokes, someone who is lazy. And I find it so strange that they have such a heavy regulation on cannabis when you have its big brother who's well-nourished called prohibition, alcohol, around doing just as much, and I would even say in some case, more damage to your life than cannabis. And you speak on that a little bit, Mr. PR?
Alcohol is something, it's a substance that the RSA will be looking at, for sure.
Is there any regulation for alcohol right now in St. Lucia?
Yeah. There's a liquor license act.
There is?
There is a liquor license act.
Besides having a bathroom.
You have a liquor license act that exists. It's from 1960.
Is it being enforced?
Similar to the fireworks thing.
Yeah, the fireworks, that's the Explosives Act is from 1899.
And that's it. It's not been reviewed since then. So you see why the RSA is needed. So alcohol, and I have the pleasure, honestly, of moderating the social media pages, and almost under 60% of any content that gets engagement, somebody says, when are y'all doing alcohol? Right? That is the first thing. When are y'all doing alcohol? And then the next question is, when are y'all doing tobacco? Because it's at this point almost commonly understood that, yes, alcohol is damaging. Cannabis can be too. Tobacco is as well. But then there will be people who consume it for different reasons, social and so on. But it needs some regulation. We can't just let this thing go on and continue to be consumed in these spaces and not protect as many people as possible. Can't protect everybody, but
so I'm gonna throw a wrench in that entire point. It is correct. However, Any of you have an Amazon account?
Yeah.
Right. You have a Visa card that's used to purchase stuff on an Amazon account.
Yeah.
Lovely. Right. So the banks do not care that we sell alcohol in St. Lucia. The banks care if we sell cannabis. So if you still want an Amazon account and you want to be able to use that lovely Visa card to buy stuff on Amazon, then you can't treat them the same. That's the long and short.
You cannot do what?
You can't treat the two of them the same because you have international bodies that are tied in with your banking sector internationally who can say to your banking sector, that country allows for illegal cannabis. That country allows for this or that. And that's what will cause the issues that
So what is
voice of production? So are you telling me that even when we go commercial with the RSC, are we going to be okay with our banks in terms of our banking system cannabis?
That's why we have to have such a regulated system. So persons saw, for example, in St. Vincent, when they legalized, that everybody who had a license for cannabis had to have two separate bank accounts. They had to have a bank account where all cannabis funds went and a bank account where non-cannabis funds went.
Why?
The rationale is if you have corresponding banks that do not want to touch cannabis money, i.e. your US banks that's saying we don't touch cannabis money, you can't wire money anywhere using the US banks if it's cannabis money. So you need to be able to say to them, I'm 100% sure that the account that wired you money does not have any cannabis funds. That's how difficult it is internationally in the cannabis space. They don't ask you, did you sell any bottles of rum last week? We might have a problem. So when people say to us, why are you being so onerous with the cannabis regime? I say, we don't have a choice. Because if I say, just free it up, then tomorrow you try to use that card and it doesn't work and you go like, what is going on? No, you see, you can't have them both. It's either you're going to have a regulated regime where you can satisfy a bank that this is the cannabis money, this is not cannabis money, this we can be sure is not illicit funds, it went through this process, this person has a license, here is a copy, they have a security clearance, all of that is done. If tomorrow any international bank calls you, we can audit everything, it's legit. So you can now have access to banking, because that's what the banks are asking. Are you going to be able to do all of that? It's like, well, we have to. So when we go to the stakeholder engagements and the community engagements and people are like, why are you treating them different? Because everybody that has a role to play in the comfort that you have in life requires to be treated differently.
And Dylan, we could also talk about why the banks would care about our traceability system for that specific reason. I mean, there's something being developed, not to water it down, but from seed to sale.
A seed to sale tracking
right? Seed to sale traceability system. So literally from the seed, from the time that thing goes into the ground and the entire process up until when it is consumed and by who it is consumed, that information has to be put together. Now, this is something where the financial industry would be interested in, for sure. So we have to consider these types of things because, again, it's not just legalization in terms of a cup being legal means anybody could purchase it at any time, completely open to the public. Mm-hmm. But commercialization, which is what we are moving towards, is this is available for such and such use under such parameters within this time frame or whatever rail guards you put around this thing. So that's what we're looking at.
Now, you know, when you speak about that, I put it on my financial hat there, my credit union hat, and I could see you dancing around the fraud, waste and abuse and money laundering.
And that the banks, I mean, we are having the conversations and with the advancement of what the RSA is doing, right? In time, we will continue to advance these conversations to get it to a place where we are completely, we are compliant, right? However, it's not that the banks don't want to work with these operators. It is they care more about AML exposure, anti-money laundering exposure. So if the industry exposes them, and you can imagine the industry is heavily cash, right?
Yeah, heavy.
It's cash heavy. That is not
liquidity.
what
very liquid.
Any financial institution is going to look forward to. So once we can regulate, once we can have a proper traceability regime put to play and ensure that we have structured and robust legislation around all of this, I don't see a challenge with the financial industry integrating and interfacing with cannabis operators, growers, resellers, and retailers.
So are you saying that all these policies and laws and whatnot have to be put in place, secure and set before you'll move forward to the commercialization of cannabis? Is that what you're saying? You have to get all of these ducks in a row before you completely
That's
move
what's been
forward.
taking so much time. So what we would have done...
I was about to ask, are there any external authorities or forces that require certain things in the legislation for it?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what he's saying.
So that's where we'd have to tick a number of boxes. So we have to make sure that we are easy to audit, because we will get international audits of we have reports that we send out every quarter to international bodies that we are going to continue to have to submit. There's quotas. So I remember in a meeting recently, we were discussing St. Lucia's quota. So St. Lucia has a quota for importation of cannabis right now. You can import cannabis right now. The CMO can allow it. So we can import up to 200 grams of cannabis into the country for testing and other things. So the forensic lab will import cannabis for them to use for testing to verify.
On an individual basis. Let's clarify.
So whoever the CMO sees fit that has met the criteria that she has put in place may import the cannabis product. However, I'm doubtful that you will be able to say to the same CMO, I need to bring in 10 grams of sticky icky. Can you help me out?
For personal testing.
Yeah, I need to test it just to determine.
Quality
They're saying that they reach a 35% THC, and I'm just not sure I believe.
Quality assurance.
So, that's different. But we do have a quota that allows for importation. We don't have a quota for exportation. So if you want to legally export, you need to have your quota adjusted. And when the countries that export, even if it's 200 grams to us, it's part of their quota. So in import and export, it's just like radioactive material. When I'm going to send an X-ray machine, it doesn't just go in FedEx and there's approval before it gets to the country, to the person shipping it, that this has a sauce in there. This is the kind of sauce. This is its half-life. This is what will happen to it when it gets to its half-life. It will be repatriated. All of that is discussed before it gets to St. Lucia. So there are international bodies who have that responsibility, who chime in and will mandate that you put policies in place, you have regulations that they can review and they're satisfied. So that happens in the cannabis space too.
So they still have radioactive elements in things like smoke detectors when they come in?
Yes.
And I was wondering, I always wanted to order on my Amazon account a little Geiger counter. Would anybody flag me for doing that?
As of now, no.
No?
It's good quick. So all right, let's dig a little deeper into cannabis specifically and what things are going to be affected or what benefits it would give to St. Lucia in terms of the small man. When this is fully operational, I have a couple of questions, and one of them would be the small man that has hustled, not the gangster, not the bad boy, not the drug dealer, but the small man that has hustled to grow his little herb, to put some food on the table for his family, and he has done, and he's gotten harassed by police. Maybe he hasn't been harassed, but he's stuck in a loop where he has money, but he doesn't have money socially, if you understand. He can't do much with it. How or what things are you putting in place to assist people like that?
Yeah, are they invited into the party?
Yes.
The big boys.
Legacy operators, but I'll let Dylan continue that point.
So we have the cannabis regime that we have created has two pieces of legislation, not one.
Okay.
So everybody has heard about the Regulated Substances Cannabis Bill, which went for the first reading in Parliament last week.
Yes, I heard that.
But we also had this is a long one, Drugs Prevention of Misuse Amnesty Bill.
Okay.
Now, that allows for applications by persons like your jugglers to indicate, I was involved in the industry, here, present, but I want to be recognized as a legacy operator. Now, I would like an amnesty for the stuff that I was doing, because I'm coming forward and indicating that. But because I've done so, and you've been able to evidence that I was involved, because I had a conviction for having 2 pounds on me for 5 years ago, so now I would like to get an amnesty. When they get that amnesty, they deem the legacy operators. As legacy operators, they receive preferential treatment in the industry.
Okay.
So down to concessionary rates for their licenses, down to special treatment in terms of the amount of time that they will get to implement the security measures that are required. So they get a little more time, they get a little more hand-holding, and they also get to buy shares in some of the entities that will be at the core of the entire cannabis regime.
Okay.
So it makes them more attractive, because you recognize that, we're going to be candid. not everybody who's juggling now will be able to juggle in the legitimate industry.
Yeah.
Not everybody who's growing will be able to, and I'm not going to be foolhardy and try to pour, soup down everybody's throat. Oh, it's going to be great for every single person. There are people now who are cultivating, who are using pesticides and giving you cannabis with pesticides in it.
Yeah, I know that.
Pesticides is a serious
There are
thing.
people who are cultivating their cannabis in spaces of heavy metals. We're consuming. There are people who are hanging their cannabis to dry and cure in places that are not climate control, and they're giving you mold to smoke. That's happening.
Or mites and different things.
That is happening. So we've been to countries where they've done tests of their cannabis and they found fecal matter, animal particulate, mold. That's what people are smoking.
It's funny, I actually do the tests for these things, and you touch on pesticides. What is the situation right now in St. Lucia with pesticide control?
There is a pesticides control board that falls in the Ministry of Agriculture. Pesticides, toxic and hazardous substances is another regime that the RSA is supposed to look into.
Particularly residual pesticides.
Yeah, so after we've looked into establishing the regimes for cannabis and radiation, we're also supposed to look into, as I said, explosives, hydrocarbons, which would include petroleum, because that sector has legislation that's quite dated. Looking into pesticides, toxic and hazardous substances, psilocybin, alcohol, maybe go into tobacco, as we said, refrigerants, a lot of the other substances that the government may deem inadequately.
So with all of that said, right, is this the reason why you guys have decided to go more centralized as opposed to the US, Canada, even St. Vincent and Jamaica? Because, I mean, I read through the entire legislation and it's way more controlled than those 4 other countries. And it seems to me that you basically learned from all these other countries and their mistakes and said, you know what, we're going to try and fix that before we roll it out here. And so I just wanted to know if that was the main reason why you guys decided to centralize and have more government control as opposed to your other counterparts.
It was that, and we decided to take our time because we knew we were going to be late to the party. Jamaica is 10 years into their legal cannabis regime. St. Vincent is about 5 years. So when we started, Barbados is now about 3, Antigua is about 3. When Jamaica passed the legislation first.
Yeah. I wouldn't say leading, but the oldest, yeah.
So we recognize that, okay, we're definitely not opening the dance. We're going to be late to the party. But if we're going to be late to the party, we want to be best dressed when you walk in. So
you're going to be an apple.
Yeah, so we don't know who else is coming, but we figured we're going to take our time and we're going to develop an industry that's going to make sense for St. Lucia. So we could have taken St. Vincent's legislation and just copied and pasted, but would it work for us? So we saw in St. Vincent, they have requirements for everything to be by way of prescription.
Yeah, they went more the medical route as opposed to what you're suggesting.
But at the time, we went to St. Vincent and I asked, what is the cost of going to a GP in St. Vincent? And they said, about $60. And I went, that's why you could say that. Because a GP in St. Lucia is double that. And if you're going to compel an old lady to go to a doctor every single month and pay $150 to $200 so they get a prescription for cannabis cream for her knee, that industry is not going to work, bro. So we need to have a non-prescription part of our industry. And they're like, oh, that won't work. I said, all right, we'll see how we can work it out. So we took another year and we refined and we decided class 1 and class 2. They're both medicinal. One requires a prescription, one doesn't. So we worked that into our industry and we took some time with it and made sure we got it right. But we didn't think that what St. Vincent did would work for us.
All right. So that being said, I read an article today from Jamaica who, like you said, was 10 years in. But they said that they are not reaping what they expected from the industry. From your exploration of the region and what's happening, what they're doing and what they're doing right and wrong. Just let's speak on that and how can we avoid that same downfall that they're experiencing right now.
I always take an opportunity to applaud Jamaica for making the bold step, being the first. But they kind of shot from the hip. So, I mean...
What do you mean by that?
They start to run and then look at where they were going?
I don't want to get into, marksmanship and all of that. That's a totally different... There's a number of rabbit holes. That's another rabbit hole. We've had a lot of rabbit holes today.
So they're just busting shots into
they started running and then look where they were running. That's what I'm saying.
Essentially. But we were happy that somebody picked up and started running. So what then happened is St. Vincent went, oh, the world didn't end when you did this? All right, cool. We can do it too. And Antigua went, wait. All right, cool. And then Barbados, one of the most conservative islands in the Caribbean, went, we'll try it too. So we applaud Jamaica for making that bold step. But they didn't have very much to go off of. So they just tried it.
So what about examples from the bigger countries like the Netherlands and the United States and kind of who, I guess it was a different thing when the United States, where most of our GDP comes from, our foreign exchange come from, said, okay, we're going to start legalizing it. Then the region start to look at, okay, if this is okay, we say it's okay. But to me, I've heard rumors and stories of it being a norm in the northern states of Europe for a little while now.
Yeah.
How come we never took example from
You know, there's one country a lot of people forget, Uruguay.
Yeah.
That is the first country in the world that completely legalized cannabis. And it's been, 60 years or more now? Yeah.
Yeah, so they have a different treatment.
Yeah.
But other people, again, there's a social context for each thing. So Thailand did a complete legalization. They just went, do a thing. And in Thailand last year went, wait. This is a little too crazy. Let's rein this back in. We didn't do this right. So
what were the mistakes Thailand saw?
They had a very unregulated space. They just said, we doing this.
Yeah,
do your thing.
Complete
Open a
legalization.
store.
Anybody
It was a
can
complete
do anything.
legalization, and they went after a few years. This is a little different to what we expected because people were doing
and
maybe a Uruguay kind of situation where it just kind of flowed well for them.
Uruguay did it and they had no
It just worked
issues.
well.
Yeah.
I mean, you have provinces in Canada that have said, you know what, you can take heroin now. They've allowed for heroin. They just said, let's just try this and see if it worked.
Okay.
To me, that's not what they
But
said.
remember
And it
when
has worked. Yes, small quantities have been
Hold on,
decriminalized.
when Amsterdam legalized cannabis, right? When they legalized cannabis, other controlled substances or other drugs of usage dropped by 80%, you know. Heroin, cocaine, and different pills like that. Because they legalized the cannabis industry and they regulated it that you could go in a cafe, have your brownies, have that. The use of the other substances dropped. Violent crime dropped by so many. There's an article you can look at it. And so there's a reason why Amsterdam did it and it has been moving. But like we were speaking earlier, in Canada, I remember watching when they said, oh, they're going to legalize across Canada. I said, that's going to last 6 months. And so said, so done. They were booming and then it just kind of dropped because you have to understand the mind of a smoker. If I have to hide every time to get a little quarter ounce, half ounce, so I can stash my shit for 3 weeks, now I can go and smoke in front of the police. I can do what I have to do. The novelty of it, I'll get my stuff. But after about 6 months of that, you're like, but why am I buying an ounce every week? I could just go buy a little 20, a little 40, do my thing. I don't have to worry about it, walk in the store, go back home. And a lot of the stores had like cannabis with mold, wastage, and a lot of things. These are things that I guess you guys are trying to prevent from happening.
So here is my question. I'm a healthy, young, active adult. Why do you need to buy an ounce of cannabis to get through your week?
Because somebody...
I want each of you all to answer.
It depends on the issue that you have. And again, a lot of people do not realize that I feel the majority of people who use cannabis are self-medicating for issues that they face.
That is so.
They may not
So
realize.
they
Even if it's just anxiety that you have, a lot of persons are self-medicating for issues that because they realize that I have something happening to me I don't like. And because of that, I take that to help me not deal with that. That's why the majority of persons are taking cannabis. Now, have they sat with a doctor to say to them, you have anxiety. You probably don't want to be taking high potency THC that is low CBD. You want something that's one-to-one that actually helps you with the anxiety. Because if you take high THC, low CBD, it'll help you temporarily while you are high, but it will exacerbate the anxiety later on.
Yeah, because you're just kicking the bucket down the road. And
so because
you have
CBD does a lot
development
more
of paranoia and all sorts of other
So
things.
CBD allows some of an entourage effects which benefits you when it comes to issues like anxiety. But you can have that conversation when you've now had a legalized regime. So somebody can say to you, you want to sleep? Well, THC will help you, but what actually really helps you sleep is CBN. So you maybe want THC, CBD, CBN 1-to-1-to-1 ratio. That's best for you to sleep.
Can't I just use a little melatonin and finish with that?
There's drawbacks to that too,
Yeah,
Yeah, there is.
Exactly. So as much as you may have the ability to take your melatonin and it may not give you some of the same challenge that other people may have, some people it doesn't work at all. Some people have some bad side effects from it. Maybe that cannabis can work from you. Maybe it can just give you CBN capsules.
Now you know what I am afraid of? These young people that cannot process things. I remember for me, like when my dad died, I had to sit with myself and try and go through it completely sober. And I remember a friend of mine looking at his family member who lost their mother and mate was smoking like a chimney while he was crying. And I could see.
Cigarettes or cannabis?
Weed.
Okay.
Cannabis. And I could see mate don't even start to think about processing what happening to him yet. And he just kicking it down the road. And to me, that's my biggest fear as an adult male. Watching other adult males not process and figure out what's going on inside of them.
But with a regulated, right? So with a regulated regime, right? These are the kinds of things that you can medicate, you can diagnose, you can go to if your psychiatrist, right, has the right license, a young male or youth, anybody can be treated for this and be administered, or it's diagnosed. You could have this amount of. You can administer this amount of cannabis, right? Whether you take it in pill form, whether you do, whatever is safest for you. Your doctor would be the one to guide you, because that's what you're trying to usher in, a medicinal regime, right? So these things can be treated, and not just, like Dylan said, people are just self-medicating, because that's what's happening now. So we're not saying that a youth cannot use cannabis for medicinal purposes. If your doctor so see it fit, then a youth can.
All right, let me ask a question in the midst of all what we're thinking. I'm hearing Dylan, you're speaking, and you are using what I would consider to be more technical terminology in terms of understanding the balance of what this type of cannabis will do vis-a-vis this, right? But we're coming out in terms of a society which just consumes whatever they get. The fight back, right? So what is the RSA's process in terms of education from that front? In terms of how they're going to be able to sensitize people to understand the value of knowing what it is that you're smoking, and why is the RSA's important to be able to help you regulate so you get the right thing for what you want.
So we actually just finished our first publication, which is called,
What You Should Know.
What You Should Know, Medicinal Cannabis. So that should be coming.
Yeah,
There's a lot in there. So I'm hoping you would read the entire book, because we dive into a lot of the stuff that we've discussed here, different cannabinoids within the plant, what cannabis can be used to help you with. And it's not just for the cannabis user, it's for anybody. So it's for the person who says that cannabis has no benefit to me. It's for the old lady that says that what I would need cannabis for. No, well, it can actually help you with this. It helps with inflammation. It helps with this. So we have that publication coming out soon. We have Diving into the Weeds, which is a panel discussion that we're putting on at the end of this month. We're bringing to St. Lucia Dr. Marshall Emanuel, who's one of the foremost minds in cannabis in the Caribbean. He actually has developed his own strains. He's a professor at the University of the West Indies. We're bringing Dr. Gerald Thompson from St. Vincent. He is the CEO of the authority there, but he's also a medical doctor and has been in the cannabis industry for quite some time. So they'll be coming. And we also have persons like the CMO coming to chime in and say what their concerns are, what they're worried about, what they think is to be done. We also have Priest Kailash coming to say from his perspective what's happening within that space. So we're trying to not just look at it from one perspective, but have everybody get an opportunity to chime in on how they view the plant, what benefits they see, what concerns they have. So that'll be taking place at the end of the month. And we also have the booklet and a few other booklets coming out soon.
So shameless plug. Please register for Diving into the Weeds. Check out our website, rsa.govt.lc, or check out the Regulated Substances on Instagram and Facebook, and register for Diving into the Weeds. It's a free event. It's honestly a free event.
So are we invited?
You are invited. You are a specially invited guest.
Ever since the criminalization of cannabis, right? One of the conversations that you hear people have is, how can the small man benefit? There's a perception that it's only the big boys of the land and thing will benefit from the cannabis industry in St. Lucia. What would you say? What say you about that?
So we were on that topic a little earlier, and I remember us bringing up the legacy operators. We cannot compel you to move into that space. We can't say to you that you've been doing this illegally for so many years and I'm going to force you to fall into this industry. we cannot also give every single person. When we did our initial research, we were at about a little over 400 farmers in St. Lucia. 400
Cannabis
people.
farmers?
Yeah, we have about 400 cannabis farmers in St. Lucia. Yeah. We don't expect that you would have 400 farms in St. Lucia when you have a legalized regime. There are some persons who are up in the heights when police had Mutame on Jimmy. And so we're not going to be in a position to say, well, I can give 400 people 3 acres each. We still have food security issues. We still have water issues. Wasco still not giving me water back yet. There's a need for...
Yeah, boy, what? Boy, I've been rationing my showers.
It's just a fact the country dealing with at the point.
We're dealing with those challenges. And you cannot then say to a government that because cannabis is this industry you want to push and legitimize, then I want you to give the lion's share of our agricultural land to persons to farm cannabis. Yeah, there's going to be a policy decision as to how you can benefit from giving these persons some land and how they can benefit from using that land to get into the industry. But it's not going to be a situation where government is going to say, all arable land now to all the Rastaman and all the people that were growing it before. It's yours, yes. To hell with tomatoes and cucumbers. We don't need that. Who eats that anyway?
Yeah, because you might
there's going to be a need for us to help these persons out, yes. But that's why we have the legacy operator. That's why we're saying if investors are coming in and they have to pay X for a license, we're going to make you attractive. So they can come to you and say, I can do this myself and pay X for a license. Or I can partner with you and pay Y for this license. I'd rather partner with you. They also can buy into the central trading entity. That is a rabbit hole that we could go down and spend quite some time.
I think we should, but not.
But hold on. Before you continue, the question I have pertaining to what he was saying is, that's the cultivation part. What about retail locally?
So let me just, before you ask that question, because I wanted to go down that path, to Dylan's point, we're looking at jugglers now, right? That's what the conversation was about. But with the regime that will pass, you can decide, you can move across to different applications. So you could be a juggler.
A legacy operator, you could be not a cultivator.
Right, you could be a cultivator. You could be an exporter, right? You can be a researcher. You can transport. There's a license specifically for transportation. So you can decide, you can move either vertically or horizontally, however you see it fit, and play to your strengths, just like any other business industry, right? You can, if you're dealing in food, you could sell it wholesale, you could sell it byproducts, you could have a restaurant, you could have a bar. It depends on how you want to do it. We're also looking at something called a consumption license, an experience license.
Yeah, so we have experience licenses, we have consumption space licenses, we have events licenses. So we've done something that the rest of the islands have not done.
So can you imagine, right? Before you ask that question, can you imagine, right? Some of our major events happening with consumption spaces, like legitimized consumption spaces. I see some smiles in the room. Yeah. All right. I just putting that out there. I'm just putting that out there.
So that's good, right? But what about just the licenses? So the different tier licenses you spoke about, there's just one fee for that license.
No.
There is no, so if you're a legacy operator, you would pay one fee. If you're just a random solution who has a little bit of money, he would pay a different fee?
Yes, a much different fee. Okay. So, and they have not been finalized as yet. We had a presentation this week to the minister, actually, to go through some of these things. But regardless as to what the quantum is at the end of the day, the expectation is that it will be a gross difference between how the legacy operators are treated.
My brother uses a very fancy word. You use quantum. I guess that's the smallest measurable unit.
The amount of money that the legacy operators will be charged will be very different to what a non-legacy operator will be charged. So we recognize that you were in the cannabis space for years. You were feeding your family. You were sending your children to school. That is how you survived. We cannot compel you to stop the industry, but there's standards to it now. And what we will do is we will make it a lot more attractive for you to be in this space than anyone else who wants to come into this space who was not involved in it before. So you may not want to stay a cultivator. You may say, you all require in fence, you all require in this. I don't have land, I don't have family land, I have none of these opportunities. But maybe I can do a dispensary. You're a legacy operator. You're not limited. If you want to move from cultivation because you don't have the family land, you don't have the this, you don't have that, but There's a nice little space in the middle of Castries that you can get to rent for X amount and you can set it up properly. You're like a sea operator, my
My brother, I just about doing like chicken runs in St. Lucia where everybody's going to put on in the corner. No, I dead serious.
No.
There used to be one in run debate, then KFC. I could see why KFC would have a problem.
So that like all of these things sound attractive and good, because there was one of the issues I had when I heard was I met a gentleman once who was from Colorado. You know, Colorado was one of the first places to do it. And he said that the licensing system they had was a tier system. So it was, if I wanted to open a dispensary and the value of my dispensary was $15,000 US, my license fee would be X amount versus somebody that could open a mega store for $1 million value. His license fee would be higher. And they went through it like that. So it basically gave everyone equal opportunity to move forward. And if you operate that for a year and you figure you want to go bigger, you register, your fee pays more on whatever it is. So that's why I brought that up. So people who are interested in the industry and who have been in the industry can understand it's not just going to be for the people with money or the people with land or whatever it is. The board is actually fair across. They've given you all opportunities like they mentioned. So if you miss out on the opportunities, it's only your fault.
And that's why we started our stakeholder engagement so long ago. So we didn't want to pass legislation, drop regulations and say, here you go. And you're all on the same, even if the amount that you pay is different, some persons require the time to mobilize. So we said, let us start, we started actually January last year, and we went around the island and we started saying to the persons, this is what's in the bill. Start reading, start understanding. Then we finished our regulations. Before the bill was even passed, we started working on the cultivators regulations, processor regulations, and we put them on our website and we went around the island saying, this is what's in the cultivation regulations. Tell us now if it's too difficult to reach. We can see if we can meet the standard required internationally, but maybe tailor it to work for us. We've been having those conversations because you recognize the need for you to understand early enough what you have to do within the space. Now, if we spent a year and a half saying to you, that's what you're going to require as a dispensary. This is what you're going to require at the dispensary. We go to the top of Mount Jimmy, to the top of the belfry at the cathedral, and we ring the bell. That's what you require. And you wait a year and a half, and the legislation is passed, and you're sitting back like,
but
and then somebody else comes in, and you go, then bullets, boy, that's not running, you know. And I said, well, the way you were sitting down there, if it was running, you couldn't catch it, huh?
But my boss, you know, that is the culture. I could tell you 5 minutes I'm not doing that.
But that is what I'm saying. And we are expecting that there are some persons who are going to do that. But we have been trying everything possible to go out to persons and say, yes, right now you're operating illegally. But see yourself as a businessman who will be able to go to a bank and get a loan for a business soon.
You really
Do you
think them fellas see themselves as a business?
No, but that's what we have to ask them.
Some will.
And some already are. And that's what we find lamentable is that the people that we go to and we say, listen, take the time to think about how you're going to get into this industry. Right now, you're planting a row of seeds. When you plant a row of seeds, all of this, the plants that come out of them have different cannabinoid profiles. And because of that, you harvest that. And I cannot give somebody definitive cannabis potency. You need to be able to say, when you go and you buy a panel at Massey, you know exactly how much of that product is going into your system. If you want to be a cultivator, you need to be able to get to that standard. So I know I want to drink a beer and I want that amount of intoxication. I know I want to go and smoke a spliff. I know if I go to Daman, I get in it at 20% THC, it will give me that kind of a high. It cannot be I have a hard thing there for you. That's not what the industry can be. But but my thing harder than Daman.
You know, I don't like how you say that because Valentine's Day come in the family and I come in, have a hard thing there for now to go and sleep.
The Viagra, you ask him about that, so he might just
no, but all jokes aside, I hear a lot about regulation, but they have the other side of regulation, which is enforcement. I guess in some of the stakeholders will be St. Lucia Bureau of Standards.
Correct.
And the police force. The other side, the dark side of the enforcement might be, what do you do when you catch somebody breaking the rules? Because they might say, we give you all that chance and you still doing that. And then they start having public floggings and all kind of things. So I want to know, what's the police posture on everything that's going to happen? And can we even enforce or have the extra man hours and funds to help properly roll it out, because regulations without enforcement is as good as nothing. I'm somebody within 5 months for a simple police report, and that's a heavily regulated industry with insurance and everything else.
So it's not just the police. We actually have inspectors in our legislation. So we have persons who are trained within the cannabis space who will be part of the enforcement regime. So that's one. In addition to that, it becomes a lot easier, as we've seen internationally, when you legitimize an industry. So if all of us are acting illegally, when the police come there,
what's acting illegally?
If all of us are acting illegally in any space, so all of us are juggling.
Okay.
When the police come, it's basically the police coming. If I have a license and y'all are acting illegally, and I paid my money for my license, and I'm meeting the standard, and you're saying illegally, but me that's calling the police officer. But but me that's
check on number there, check on number there, check on numbers.
I have gone through the rigors of meeting that standard.
And that is exactly what KFC did to the chicken van operation outside. Because I agree with that, because don't tell me I go to the food board, I make sure my food's safe. I have to pay them all how much money for rental. And then I see man has opened a little cab waiting in front of me there, doing anything, and then somebody get a food poison and they say all chicken is bad chicken.
And you're taking my customers.
And you're taking my customers. And I'm paying a higher.
So, with that, there's a scenario that was happening when they first decriminalized it. And when I think the legislation says you can have 30 grams on your loose, right?
I know where this is going.
All right. But they've had many stories of men or young men or people having on their person in their vehicle, and police accosting them, even if they quote the legislation, even if a particular somebody had spread the leaflet to print to hold, they were still either arrested or it was seized on them.
Now, you know what I wonder, if the police have a skill there to see if it's 40 grams they have on them for truth.
Well, that's the thing. But they were just, it's like, but officer, I don't have baggies, I don't have a scale, so I'm not in distribution. This is what I have on me. It's legal for me to have on me. They still accosted, it's still taken from them. Why is that?
It is legal to have on your person. So the legislation currently allows you to have 30 grams
on your person.
On your person.
Right.
Any police officer who's taking 30 grams for an individual, quoting any piece of legislation, is acting in contravention of the law.
Okay.
You are also allowed to cultivate 4 plants in your house.
I know that one. Yeah.
It's not 5. It's not 3.5. It's 4.
It's 4 per person.
No. 4 plants per household.
At first I heard it was 4 plants per person.
No. The legislation allowed
that's why interpretation is very important.
So it doesn't matter if there's 18 people living in the house or 1 person living in the house. The household is allowed to have 4 plants.
So if I see my neighbor growing some plants on the property line, and I see her 5 plants, I could just take one from him for the police on him.
You're stealing them and plants, me.
Well,
and you want me to tell you
because that's a crime.
So he had 5 and you steal the man plant. So both of y'all going down.
Wow.
Anyway,
a good thing.
So any officer who is seizing a plant and somebody has 4, or is saying that the person is not allowed to have 30 grams, is not acting in keeping with the legislation.
Okay.
Now, there are instances where the police are, and I know that always comes up when we have these conversations, the police are seeing persons who have a pound or 2 and are still acting by taking it or charging them. We have the amnesty, which is part of the legislation for cannabis. In the amnesty, it speaks to these cases being dismissed. I am not the commissioner of police.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot dictate how busy the police force and the police officers are. I do not set the policy for the police force. So I cannot tell the commissioner of police not to pursue somebody who may have broken the law. What I can say is the legislation that I have been given the instructions to draft and the legislation that I've seen finished and submitted to Parliament for first reading allows these persons in a few weeks, months, to be able to apply for an amnesty and have some of these cases dropped. I don't know if they have extra time on their hands or what the reason is, but they do have the ability legally right now to say, you have £2, I'm going to arrest and charge you. That does not change the fact that the legislation that is being proposed right now says that when it is passed, you can put in an application for an amnesty and say, I used to sell cannabis. And the DPP can say that matter will be dropped. So
suppose it was an old case, right? And you were already charged and you paid your fine or you did jail time or whatever. How does this new legislation affect persons who were arrested for cannabis? So, sorry?
They're still legacy operators. So the legislation specifies that if you are at the time of the passage of the legislation or prior to passage of the legislation, you were engaged in the cultivation or sale of cannabis products. So the person who has a conviction from 10 years ago for having 500 plants can still come to say, I used to cultivate. It's easy for them because they can say, here's the conviction. I was convicted for that. Yeah. So we just go, all right, we don't really need to do very much of an investigation in this case.
Would they be able to...
Important and no, so that's different.
They'll be expunged from their record.
That's a different process. So that's a different process that you go through the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act and you can get your conviction expunged from your record. That's different. But under the RSA's legislation, we don't deal with the expunging of your record. What we can say is, we know you had a conviction, we will deem you a legacy operator, and we will allow you to come into the cannabis space.
My brother, you're talking to the average person. What do you mean by expunging of records?
So you right now, when you go CRO and you ask for a criminal record for you to get the job, they usually say you have no conviction or you were arrested in that time for having the certificate of good character. Yes, right. So if right now it's saying you had a little something on you back then, you had a spliff, you can have that removed from there.
Now, you said legacy operators, right? What is a burden of proof? Can I just walk in and say, I used to sell weed, give me preferential treatment?
No, so it's a lot more strict than that. So we have regulations that require a proper investigation. So if you were involved in cultivation, for example, then you need to be able to submit documentation to evidence that, bring persons to give statutory declarations to say, well, yes, this person was involved. Evidence more than just saying I was growing or I was selling. Because I'm sure if you were growing or selling and you had a viable business, other people know
somebody
that you were growing.
Somebody knows.
Other people must be able to vouch for the fact that you used to grow or sell. And if nobody knows that you used to sell, then maybe who are you selling to? Who are you buying it from? If you were cultivating, I had 500 plants on the hills there and sold it to who? Well, I never already sold it to. And you expect a legacy operator certificate because you just want us to believe you were cultivated. So yeah, we do have our inspectors who will be going through and ascertaining whether or not you were a legacy operator before you were given that title.
Let me ask. You said conviction a while ago. Putting into how you could become a legacy through having a prior conviction. What if my conviction was possession of, and not necessarily for the purpose of what with the intent of resale? So, like for example, I'm a typical weed head, right? I smoke. Correct. Police arrest me.
You confess,
right?
The money was cracking.
I never smoked in my life.
So, might the lawyer need to come out?
Yeah. So I'm asking. So in that scenario,
if you had more than 15 grams, you were charged for possession with intent to supply. Anybody who had more than 15 grams, and I'm sure the majority of the people in the room can appreciate what 15 grams is, it's not very much. If you had 15 grams of cannabis before 2021 and you were arrested for the cannabis, they didn't charge you with possession. They charged you with possession with intent to supply.
Wow. So that means any boy that was arrested with 15 grams...
who had more than 15 grams was charged with possession with intent. That is why we require doing the investigation to find out, yes, you have that, but where were you selling? Where were you this way? That's why we have that additional component I spoke about.
So when is this component going to be available to the public? Or
well, the first reading has happened, so it is really for Parliament to determine.
After that, then you have all in.
Yeah, so when the legislation is passed, and you're bringing the lawyer in me out. After you pass the legislation, so it's gone through the first reading, it goes through a second reading and a third reading. Then it goes to the upper house, and the upper house then enacts it. Then you have a Governor General who will give royal assent to it and commence it. That is when it becomes actually in force. At which point in time, you can go in, put in your applications, do whatever you needed to do it for the industry.
All right. All right, so let's keep it real simple. What kind of time frame you see in terms of all that process and everything being set up and whatnot, so we get to the point where we have events, like I said earlier, and most importantly, because we're a tourist island, tourist destination, to have tourists come and enjoy here. Because for me personally, I'm a mini Amsterdam kind of person. I want to see a red light district in this country where you can just go and do any and every drug. Wow. I've said so several times before.
Do it Rat Island so they can. They can. Yeah, they won't film after that.
Let's think of the tourists. Not for the black people, not for the Negroes. Let's think of the tourists.
So you want the tourists to come here and take any drug possible and... Okay, so I am not the Attorney General of St. Lucia, and I'm not the Prime Minister. So I'm not in a position to say when it will receive the second and third reading. But I can say that we've had conversations with the new Minister of Commerce, and he is very excited and eager to have the legislation passed. So I don't think we have 6 months before you have that legislation passed. And that's why the first reading has already happened.
Also, let me just add to that, the current Minister of Commerce is also the Minister of Tourism, so there would be some...
And investment.
Now,
cross-interest there.
Now to me, I'm not a regular user, but I'm pretty sure...
Are you a user at all?
Very, very mild.
Social?
If anything. Not even that much.
Very mild cannabis that you are using?
Like frequency, like very...
Mild frequency?
Let me tell you,
once a month.
Last time
you do the 1 in 5, or you're not the 1 in 5? Because I just counting. So
I'm not the 1 in 5.
He's a point.
Last time
once every 2 months.
Last time somebody gave me one, that thing stayed there for months before I remember where it was. I think I still
shop here.
You know that you don't say
Yeah, I'm not a user, but yeah, the tourists come down. I can point out to you 5 places where they can go and get the things, and it's one of the best known public secrets in St.
what
Lucia.
things?
The weed supply as soon as they come down to St. Lucia.
What weed?
I have no idea. I just
but that is the exact thing. So what they get it is my boss have a hunting there. And that's the problem. When you go to a dispensary in Colorado, in Toronto, in Amsterdam, and you go to a dispensary, you have the ability to determine 27%, 33%? Bro, nah. Can I start over 22? You can do that. When people talk about all of the bad trips that young persons have been having with edibles, my question always is, what did they take? Weed. What did they take?
Hard weed.
Somebody had some weed. They didn't know the potency of the weed. They then reduced that into an oil with margarine and whatnot, and then made some edible. We know nothing about the potency. And then they're like, oh, he had a trip. What did he eat? How much of it? How many milligrams of THC is in his system?
I didn't know of a place that did that. They were not as accurate, but they had the app and stuff that could give you an average of what the THC level was, and they could give you an average of what the edibles were and everything. So there's a place that used to do that.
So I'll give a joke. We have just started testing some of our landrace strains in St. Lucia. The RSA has gotten equipment to allow us to test some cannabis and cannabis products. Someone I know brought
you want to know those tests, eh?
Somebody, no, it's an equipment.
The Neo
Spectra. It's an NIR Neo Spectra, so it can allow for us to just put in the cannabis and it will tell us what cannabinoids it has, what terpenes it has. It gives us a full profile.
Okay, so I guess you vaporize it and then check the spectrum against the profile.
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to vaporize it, but yes, so it uses light and infrared and it can tell you what cannabinoids it has.
You can tell by the color of the terpenes and everything.
Just by the color?
And the amount of light that's refracting from it. But anyway, you do have to go down that rabbit hole. Okay. That's another thing, one at a time. So somebody brought under 30 grams to the RSA and said, can you test this? I said, cool, yeah, we can. We tested it, but he had brought different strains and different flowers from different plants. And when we did the first test, called him and said, that was actually 26% THC. And he said, which one was it? So I said, well, you didn't label them, so we have actually labeled them ourselves. So we have it as sample 1. Yeah, so
the man didn't even label it.
He didn't label them, he just got like different samples. So we label it for our own process. And we were like, well, one of them is 26%. And he said, I have to come back and smoke that one so I can understand what 26% is. Because he knows, he's like, I don't really know what you mean by 26%, but if you give me back the rest of that sample, I'm a blaze it. And then I will be able to understand from there, I want stronger than this or I want less than this going forward. This man has been smoking weed for 30 years.
Yeah.
There is not anyone that much understanding there.
But he doesn't know what 26% THC means. He has no idea. But he has been getting hunting.
My brother, you see me at hunting.
No, that's actually like yesterday when I heard somebody in Rodney Bay say to a tourist. That's what I mean, all jokes aside.
That is what I'm saying.
Hunting devil.
Nobody will come and say I have bushweed. Like nobody will come and say I have bushweed. You want to buy bushweed? It ain't gonna happen.
I think there was somebody in the bedroom. I will go in the street and think
and even if we go past like the hard thing and the bushweed, you hear the different names, the Bob Marleys, the Sour Diesel, the Sticky, the this, the that. We have no way of classifying this. I mean, you could just look at it.
We can't classify it, but I'll say for the few people I know that are serious about this thing and have been operating for a number of years, you can go by deduction that if somebody brings down sour diesel seeds and they plant it, those that understand, you understand that your nutrition, your light, and your soil play a big factor in your production and when you introduce certain things and what have you. But if a sour diesel is supposed to be 25% THC, if you go online, they'll tell you if you just give this thing water and soil, the minimum they'll get is 15%. So you can say, all right, I've given certain nutrition. So you can say, all right, it might not be what you used to over here, but I guarantee you it'll give you, because I'm looking at about 20%. You can safely say that as someone who's hustling or whatever, if you're serious.
No, I disagree completely. So there's a bell curve that takes place with the cannabis plant and all of the cannabinoids, but most persons are only interested in the THC. So there's a prime time for harvesting based on, because after a certain time it plateaus. Because the trichromes get full and then they start to deflate. So after you've harvested, your curing process can ruin your trichrome.
Yeah, that's true.
So you have both of us have sour diesel. Both of us planted them side by side, same medium, same soil they're in, same amount of water, same nutrients. You hang yours over there, I put mine in AC there. We bring it out and sell it. We would have 10% THC difference in our product. So again, same seed, same hunting, but you have 20% THC, I have 10% THC bushweed. It's sour diesel seeds, but again, that's why you need an industry where we know for a fact. I remember speaking to a master grower in Ottawa last year, and he said to me, we as master growers cannot touch the Caribbean people on cultivation. We know that. We've studied this for 20 years. You can look at seeds and tell hermaphrodites, you guys are different to us. Where you fail is post-harvesting. You guys are horrible at post-harvesting.
Yeah.
So they are putting cannabis in a room with, I think, half a degree. They're going down by every day to slowly cure it. And they have a humidifier in one corner and a dehumidifier in the other corner. And that's the science that they're going through. You will go in the shack and find a tent with weed hanging in a tent in the shack. So how do you expect in the humidity of Fosse Shack up there that's going to cure properly? So that's what I'm saying to you. You may use the same seeds that someone else is using and have a totally different product, even if you understand cannabis.
Now you're giving me ideas there, but I'll refrain from that.
Oh, so you're confessing, so you're not a consumer. Now I'm understanding. You are not a consumer, but you do participate in the industry in some way or not.
I don't participate in the
No, but you say we're giving you ideas. Why would we be giving you ideas?
Because you're talking about the scientific process of cultivation and getting a proper yield out of something, and I can definitely relate to that.
And appreciate that.
Yeah, and even with the accidents with the edibles, people don't like to wait. So they have a time from eating it to a time to actually seeing the
metabolize.
Yeah. And then
it depends on the person.
And the transport mechanism.
A good.
To me, half an hour.
It depends on how you metabolize.
Half an hour.
People can metabolize quickly.
Some people will say to you, wait an hour. Some people, now it's not going to take 2 seconds. So, and there's different, like, your administration
already,
yes, I mean, metabolize it because you're literally eating it. It's going into your stomach and it's being metabolized.
Everybody different.
So it hits you differently. Now, for some persons who want the quicker means, they will smoke because you're going to have that usually within instant
5 7 minutes
to less than a minute. You will have it hit the receptors because again, it's receptors in the body. Or you may want to take a tincture drop it on your tongue, and see how quickly it can go through the membrane of the mouth and get to the same receptors. So when you take, but again, THC only gets you high if it is heated. Only gets you high if it's heated. So you smoke it, you heat in the THC, it's gonna have that psychoactive effect. You can make a cream and have no psychoactive effect if it was not heated. You can have different, you can take cannabis, you could take the cannabis plant and ingest it and not get high.
Wait, but that doesn't justify, for example, I remember I had a gummy at one point in time.
It has been carboxylated.
My best anything in my life was on a gummy. I will not do it again. Was my best anything was on a gummy.
The best what?
Anything was on a gummy. Right?
So we know what hit you. We know what hit you now.
Nah, because afterwards I didn't like it. Right?
Oh, the coming down.
Because what happens is I was hyper alert. I was aware. I was fully aware. And I because I believe I was fully aware, I was able to make sure that I didn't have mistakes. Right? But afterwards I was hysterical.
What you are focusing on, you have moved on it. So now you focus on yourself.
Yeah, I mean, like laughing for no reason, bro.
And there's nothing wrong with laughing.
Laughing for no reason.
There was research we came across recently that says when you take at least high THC cannabis, when you take high THC cannabis, or even balanced, so it has a 1-to-1, it usually causes an 80% increase in the blood flow to the brain. That's why ice used to get and all these things to happen as well, because it causes about 80% increase of flow to the brain. So, if you are feeling anxious or you're feeling paranoid and you take that and there's so much more blood flow and so much more processing taking place in your brain, you will have a very different reaction to the cannabis than if you are sitting there trying to focus and you are telling yourself, I need to focus, and you take the product when you are in that mind space. So, a lot of persons need to recognize as well, if you are sad and you are grieving, like your friend you spoke about, and you take it, it doesn't necessarily take you away from the grieving. You sit in that grieving in a deeper space because it heightens everything that you are experiencing. So the person who Valentine's Day you want to take the Viagra for, when you, that's how we start. Can we go back?
That's how we open the conversation. You said it's Valentine's Day, and you needed for Valentine's Day. If we would regulate Viagra, that's what regulated Viagra, because I know some man will pay $150
for someone you're asking.
Not me.
Is it a friend, man?
That's right. Out of the blue pill, just waiting for the time.
Asking for a friend.
Now you know,
a friend of a friend.
Boy, I remember my one experience with an edible.
So you are considering hardcore.
Now, that was a long time ago when I was much younger. Okay. And I could tell you, I could understand why some people say some utter rubbish and think they're making sense when they're smoking. As soon as, and those things, I went to sleep. And I woke up. It didn't have any effect on me when I was awake. But when I went to sleep and I wake up, I feel like I would have touched the center of my consciousness in my head. And I remember coming outside. And I was trying to figure out where my body was, right? I remember coming outside, right? Try and figure out where my legs or where my hand were. I could have felt the floating sensation everything.
Special trip.
Yeah, man. It was nice. I will lie, it was nice. So I see my friend there.
Like dreaming, but
I was wide awake, fully cognizant. My friend reached out to me, I reached out to him. And I keep missing his hand, and he keeps spitting his hand. And then he started laughing. He said, boy, wait, high as hell. The next day, I could see different colors. All the colors of the rainbow, just like Billy Ocean's song, On the Winds of Love. I can definitely see why people would say it enhancing everything.
I will say something to that. And as a consumer for over 30 years, with cannabis, and this is my take on it, as a consumer, it is your responsibility if you have, like people say, a younger or less experienced person who's coming to you for advice or whatever. I believe it is your duty to guide them correctly, because there are some people that know if that's your first experience. I'm not going to tell you to smoke that whole joint. I tell you, take 2 or 3 puffs, sit down in it, see how it hits you. I'm not going to tell you, take this whole brownie or this whole gummy, and I don't know what's going to happen. Take a quarter.
How many responsible
That's what I'm
16-year-olds you
saying.
ever
That's what I'm
seen?
saying. That's me. I've always been that kind of person. I think this is one of the things that should be taught or should be said to, that you are demonizing a thing because of someone's experience, because you wanted to be malicious about it. Whereas if you guide someone, they might be a lifelong regular consumer, semi-regular consumer, versus, boy, I ain't smoking that again. I ain't taking that again because the last time I saw the devil, I walked down the road, I take off my clothes. All because
He said this even the way the devil, you see.
Well, but all because you do a malicious act. Boy, let me get down on the high, boy. Let me smoke that whole thing.
Kicks on him after.
You understand? And it kicks off on him afterwards. Supposed to be your friend, your compadre, whatever it is. You know, so to what you're saying, yeah, we get them experiences, but if you have someone who's next to you who's responsible, you can actually enjoy them experiences.
Now, me personally, after that experience, I didn't see the point in going through it again, because I have experienced that without smoking or taking any substances. I could get there without doing all of that.
Touch your consciousness without.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Well, I am about the Viagra part. I never use Viagra. I never use Viagra in my whole life.
What you say?
Bless your sins.
Hey boy. Can I have my glass, please? These guys are But I've heard stories. I remember that a young lady called me and asked me to come and rescue from a situation where she was in a house with a guy and they both smoking. Now, the nuance about the whole story is, so that you know that wine is regulated and the percentage is right thing, and brought to you by SA Wines. Yeah, give it was more. SA.
They also do wine tasting, people, so feel free to go.
Yeah. Let's at least do a toast.
You cannot be a sommelier. I'm seeing your drunk is on there right now. What?
Yeah, I don't know.
Is that better?
No, you have to pour on the bottle as you finish the pour, otherwise it's good.
It looked like you didn't drink either, man.
I cannot do that. Yeah.
So you drink.
I think the top of paragraph is nervous. Let me show it, please.
Let's go.
So back to the story about the young lady. She called me to rescue her. Now the funny thing is, one of our other topics, if you take care of me, should I take care of you? You want to smoke. You don't have money to smoke. That's what is smoke. And you're afraid that the person have other intentions in it. So then the young lady called me over to rescue her, right? She wanted to do things.
Jason, why is they always call you? That's what I want.
French. You don't stickers. I'm a designated taxi operator sometimes, so.
Alright.
Okay.
Wait, so. Alright, so with everything we've discussed tonight, let's say in 5 years, where do you see the association, the authority, one, and what is your hopeful vision for St. Lucia?
I'll let Dylan on the future proofing of the RSA. Let me touch on St. Lucia. I want to see a more educated society. So you see, I mean, I know the RSA, we regulate multiple forms of substances, but I want to see a more educated St. Lucia, and of course more educated region about cannabis in particular, because this is the topic that we have. I want to see it to be medicinal, and I want to see these kind of conversations. These kinds of conversations need to happen. They could not happen before, because if anybody had admitted prior to a few years ago, they say less than 50 grams, admit that you have more than 50 grams, then we'll probably be walking out in cuffs. But we are progressing, and it's a sign, it's a good sign that we can have these conversations. 5 years from now, the youth that are coming, those that who are, like you mentioned, the irresponsible 16-year-olds, if they want to consume cannabis, there will be a space that they can get educated if it is for medicinal purposes or when they pass the age of 21, if they want to consume it for recreational purposes, social, whatever you want it to be.
Yes, my only
Very
hope is
excited
that
to see a more educated solution.
my only hope is that they just don't use it as a crutch to other life experiences. It's not the end all. Just a little, you get over the river and you leave the boat there. But you do not need the boat for everything. Like, I don't want you.
Both the fostering of this industry, right? You would have the people around you that can recognize these things, right? So parents would be more educated, children growing up would be more educated, the society, teachers would be able to recognize, oh, you know, maybe this person is consuming in some way or form, and they are using it as an emotional crutch to get over their whatever it is. And you can recommend something for them, some holistic transformation approach.
Can we have a toast to parents? Let's have a toast to the parents.
Because it's Valentine's Day.
No. I'm already a parent. Like, let's have a toast to the parent, man, that pretend they never do anything in their whole life and they more afraid of what you when you start doing it. They used to do when they was young.
We got SCA wines.
We got SCA wines. We got this year. That was my point.
So on my end, the motto of the RSA is safety, certainty, and safety, security, and certainty. And success, sorry. Safety, certainty, and success. The wine and safety, security, and success. We deal with more than just cannabis, and I think in all of these substances we recognize that there is a risk inherent in its use.
Yes.
But there are possible benefits from the use of these substances. So cannabis for us is no different to radiation, it's no different to explosives, it's no different to petroleum. They all have possible benefits, they all have possible risks. So we see a space where, and this is part of our vision, where we can tap into the benefits that all of these substances have. We can ensure that there is safety. There is also certainty with how you go about it, applying for it, using it, the safeguards required, and that everybody can be successful in their use of these substances. So, whereas cannabis is our full substance, we are not limiting ourselves to strictly cannabis. Only in 5 years, we hope that we have had at least 5 substances adequately regulated. So, I walk through castries and I see gaps where we're not being safe. And we all know instances that have taken place in St. Lucia with explosives. We all know things that have taken place in St. Lucia in a number of contexts. That should never happen again. But we didn't do anything to ensure it never happens again. So the RSA is here to plug that gap and say, well, okay, these are the regulations for this substance going forward. If you are going to have a dentist office and you're going to be having x-rays there in that office for persons, the cake that you put on that person, one has to check for crimes. There's no one who's ensuring that that cake is going up to your neck and also blocking your thyroid gland. These are the things that bother us. We want to have a space where we can say, there's actually a band around St. Lucia where a lot of the agricultural species had cancer. Is that tied to our pesticides? That's the kind of conversation that we at the RSA want to have. So for us in 5 years, we want to make sure that there's definitely a greater level of safety in our use of all these regulated substances. There's certainty by the individuals who have now been educated and sensitized that, oh, okay, if the dentist needs to take 6 shots of my jaw with that x-ray, is that adequately calibrated? Something going on, because you can't tell me you needed me to hold still 6 times to take the x-ray right now.
That actually happens.
Yeah, it does. It does. There are people who are getting a beam of radiation, and there are people who may be in the room next door and don't realize that, well, when the dentist may have first gotten that x-ray machine, they were over there. The wall was shielded. They've now moved to some other place because the rent is cheaper. That wall is not shielded. Nobody has checked on that. And they're now beaming radiation. Everybody in the waiting room is sitting down. They're just getting beamed with radiation when 100 people went before them.
I know for you to even do that, you have to have the walls have to be a certain thickness.
They need to be lined.
And sometimes they even forget about this.
Or what we call shielding. Yeah, so they require shielding. Yeah. So for me, the RSA space is to ensure that the average person going for an x-ray in 5 years understands that we're supposed to look for a sign on the wall to ensure that this place has been checked and this entire place is shielded, and I'm not getting beyond the excess radiation, and they have calibrated that machine, and to even ask those questions. So
that's supposed to have 2 extras clean, yeah, unless you have some
special circumstance, correct. So and even people who are working in it. So there are lots of pieces of equipment on island.
All right,
for us, these are the things that we want to ensure.
Before anybody else goes, let me just ask a question. RSA is a statutory body of government, am I correct? Right? Like other statutory bodies like the SLASPers and the CIPs of St. Lucia's, right? My honest question for you is, what is your perception of the RSA if you have to put it in terms of the totem pole of statutory bodies and what they could generate for the people of St. Lucia? How would you classify it? And boost if you have to boost. How would you classify the RSA position in that totem pole?
I think we as a people have never liked regulation. So, whereas I believe the RSA is one of the most important entities that has been formed by government, I think it will be one of the most disliked. So you're now stepping in to tell persons, you're accustomed to doing this, and you cannot do it anymore like that. So you're accustomed to going down the road and seeing an old lady who has outside the house been selling tanks of gas for the last 20 years. And nobody realizes that you have tanks of gas. When I went to buy gas yesterday, you poured soapy water on it and it was leaking. And you just put it back there and said, take this one instead. And we have a 100-degree sunny day and we just have a leaking tank of gas there. Nobody worries about it. But before I exposed to the RSA, I walk around and I'm seeing these things going, this is madness. No, do we want to take away from this old lady who ability to sell tanks of gas? No. But somebody has to recognize that there is a risk in what's happening and we need to take some steps. Will that possibly cost some people more money? Yes. Will they say, them RSA people making me have to spend more money to go and do X1Z, I now have to go and do X1Z with the tank later. But that is for your safety. So I do think we are one of the most important statutory bodies that has ever been formed. But I do know that we will not be like for what we are doing for the benefit of the country.
And in terms of the benefit of the country, let's talk monetary, in terms of how we could change our landscape. What does that look like?
So we are supposed to be a revenue generating agency, but that is not the first of the RSA. So even in our conversations, we have the ability for us to apply levies to the substances, for example. Ain't nobody trying to apply a levy to an X-ray machine coming into a doctor's office or to artificially increase the cost of the treatment.
I think they're really ridiculous.
So whereas we do recognize that we are revenue generating, we have to balance that with the fact that you're not trying to, you want to create a legitimate cannabis industry. You can't tax it out the window and then say, well, we have to make our money off of it too. The black market is still going to be a strong black market and you're trying to prevent the tainted product. We have fentanyl-laced gummies coming into St. Lucia already. We've tested and found that there are kids in school who have what they think are cannabis gummies that also have fentanyl. Wow. We know that's happening. So unless you have a regime that says, we are going to screen all of that and you can get clean product and you can be sure that when you're taking your gummy, it is only cannabis in there and it has that percentage of THC or these number of milligrams, that's where we think our real value is, and not necessarily generating $20 million for the government. As much as we would like to generate revenue, we have to balance that with the benefit to the country.
So question, interagency, regional, local, like who do you all work with basically?
Everyone and anyone. So we work with St. Lucia is actually the country that requested the formation of something called the Caribbean Cannabis Forum. So before we even had an RSA, we reached out to Jamaica, Antigua, St. Kitts, St. Vincent, Barbados, and said, can you come to St. Lucia and let's have a regional discussion on cannabis? And we signed an MOU and created the forum. Incidentally, I'm going to be in Barbados next week for a forum meeting to discuss testing of cannabis regionally, which we think is still a challenge, and to discuss geographic indicators so we can look at developing a niche brand for our cannabis in the region. So we're working with all of the authorities throughout the Caribbean on it. We're also working with the authorities outside of cannabis, so the HSRA out of Jamaica that deals with radiation there. We have partnerships with them. We have partnerships with the IAEA, which is the international body dealing with radiation. So we have relationships with a number of the other statutory bodies in St. Lucia. So we work closely with Customs, we work closely with the Bureau of Standards. We're actually housed in the Bureau of Standards right now. We've met with export St. Lucia, invest in Lucia, events in Lucia, you name it. We've sought to have open discourse with all of these entities, not just on cannabis, but on the broader mandate of the island.
What's the name there? You know, Snoop Dogg, yeah?
Not yet.
On the ground, we were able to facilitate Tate and David.
Yes.
To get a scholarship to study nuclear. What's the name of this?
He's doing nuclear science. So he's on a fellowship with the IAEA right now. He's in Vienna. He'll be there for 9 months actually. Getting immersed in nuclear science, understanding small modular reactors, maybe in time if he decides to go in that direction for our needs for power generation, looking at clean energy. So he's now doing a 9-month fellowship.
You know, one day why we have to do, though you know why I say that? Because we have the brings right there. And I hear you compare it to radiation one time. I remember back in the 60s when Kodak and the United States were experimenting with radiation. We know exactly what it used to do. And they used to give women appointment to rub their face to make it blue. And right now in most Americans will actually find increase a particular isotope in people's thyroid gland because of the contamination of drinking water from experiments 60 years ago, because no long half-life of the oxygen. So let's track carefully and peacefully, but I don't think it's as dangerous as radiation. But that's very interesting. So you were saying about my reaction too.
Well, I was saying, so the IAEA came down late last year and there was a training at the Europe conference.
International Atomic Energy Agency.
So we came down and we had the benefit of speaking of them after, and most of the stakeholders in the room was from St. Lucia, within the construction industry, within industrial teachers, and people who had industrial applications with nuclear substances. And they did not know that there's nuclear substances in St. Lucia, radioactive substances in St. Lucia, right now, being used almost every day. And that there's a benefit to it. So anytime you say nuclear in St. Lucia, somebody goes, why are we using this? There's a need for it.
Also know right now we have geothermal exploration to try and see if they could diversify our energy sources. And to me that's a less friction area rather than nuclear ones.
Not necessary. So what you interview is benefits and there's honesty, anything, however you put it.
So for the IEA, the application would be for power generation. I tried to figure out what's
there's a myriad of possible uses for radiation.
It's so sure right now.
Right now,
besides the extradition,
construction uses it. So every road in St. Lucia, the reason that they're able to say that we're ready for speed is the density gauge. So you take that gauge and you probably have driven past it without even recognizing, and you unshield it and you press it down, and you will see what reading comes back, and you need to determine how dense the soil is to know if it's ready for you to actually pay. So all the construction companies who do roads have gauges. But you may not recognize that. Even at your bottling companies, they use these gauges to determine when it stops. So you ever wonder why some companies overflowing or halfway through the bottle and other companies have the exact same level on the thing every time? They use gauges. They have radioactive sources in them. So there's tons of applications right now in St. Lucia for it, outside of the medical field. And there's a myriad of other applications from agriculture, where you can now deal with pests, remove different things. I can speak for weeks on radiation application.
A million rabbit holes.
Yeah.
Let me just go back to one rabbit hole. We did an unofficial poll of how people consume marijuana, and from our poll, we have like a 43% of persons who consume marijuana for recreational purposes, and a whopping 6% for medical purposes. Now, in your own research, in your own way, is that up to par to what you found?
The majority of persons don't recognize what medicinal purposes is versus recreational purposes. That's my answer to it. So, as we said earlier, a lot of persons may be dealing with things, and they see. So your friend who was dealing with the grief of the loss of his parents and was taking the cannabis would probably answer that question and say recreational purposes, because in their mind, medicinal is this tight little box. He was seeking to self-medicate.
Especially in dealing with things like
mental illness. A lot of the persons are seeking to self-medicate for anxiety, for PTSD. They have certain issues that they're seeking to self-medicate, but they don't realize that it's actually me seeking to self-medicate. They just think that, well, I don't have some major pain that I'm taking to prevent the pain, or I don't have an issue with inflammation that I need to address, and that's medicinal, so it's recreational.
But it's also how you consume it. If you're smoking it because you have a mental illness or you feel depressed, you feel sad, 1 second, or you feel sad, based on what we are taught, when you smoking is for recreational purposes. Now, if I'm taking it as a tea,
steam,
to help me sleep, or as an oil to rub, or as an edible to eat.
Can we use that separately?
So, just to chime in on that, 60% of the worldwide cannabis market is flower, being smoked. You have persons who are actually prescribed flower for smoking. So let's say you have cancer, and you're receiving cancer treatment, and you are going to take an edible or tincture, which is usually a lot more potent and lasts a lot longer in the system. So it's metabolizes slower and may take up to 6 to 8 hours in your system. But it will take an hour for it to kick in. You are in excruciating pain. Ow, boy, wow, ow. I am not going to say to you, take this edible, sit in pain for another hour or so to see how it goes. So, but even with that, it will metabolize slower. So even through these other means of application for cannabis, they are slower than if you just go straight through.
So let me understand.
Inhalation.
You're saying, if I smoke big post, rats, rats, if I smoke a hot tea, because I'm in pain, I'm self-medicating.
I'm not saying you are. I am saying that doctors can prescribe and do right now throughout the world prescribe to persons cannabis flower to smoke for pain, for assistance with their pain.
This smoking.
So that is possible.
What is cannabis flower?
So what people smoke is the flower of the plant. So the plant itself is lovely. No. So you fooled me. So okay, the sticky icky little thing that you see, that's the flower of the plant. It's a very pretty little flower to some people. It has a very strong scent, but that is what people smoke. Anybody who's smoking the leaf, I'm very sorry. That cannabis symbol fooled you. Everybody knows the cannabis symbol as a leaf. So you can get the majority of the other cannabinoids you can still get in the stock.
Why when you said flower, I'm thinking of action.
No, so the THC is only in high percentages in the flower. And that's what gives you yesterday I used it as euphoric feeling. Somebody said, wow, euphoric feeling. Yes. That what gives you that high.
So question, based on research that you're all doing right now, talking cannabis, what industry would you see very populated when everything comes into fruition? Like, would it be my products, textile, edibles, what based on the research that you guys are doing right now,
the flowers.
What's going to be popular? Like, what do y'all see being popular?
We see the steaming of our tourism industry with the consumption in St. Lucia. So we see opportunities for us to tie in, and I made this statement in Dominica at one of the cannabis symposiums we had there. And I said, for years, and I'll probably end with this one, because this will be my mic drop moment right now. For years, we as a region have advertised ourselves by 3 S's, and the 4th S has been silent. So you've told everybody, come to the Caribbean for sun, sea, and sand. And we whispered the 4th S. We've now come to a time when Jamaica, Antigua, Barbados, St. Vincent have legalized and developed a regime to allow them to say the 4th S.
I just recognize what the 4th S is.
St. Lucia, Grenada, Dominica are in the process
of being able to establish legislation to allow for the forklift. So in a few years, in a few years, we can, as a Caribbean state, come to the region so you can experience sun, sea, stand, and Sensimilia.
I wasn't thinking Sensimilia for sure.
I know you were.
Come on, you know.
But you know, marketing for cannabis in the show will be easy. Growing on the mystic mountains of the Peter. Boy, marketing for that will be easy. Marketing solution will be going to be like, well, I mean, there are regulations.
There's regulations to marketing.
They have the regulations. Marketing.
They have the highest.
Attractive to kids. What's the highest?
They have the highest regulated marketing structure in the
Barbados is true, Lindsay.
What?
Barbados is a lot more strict than us.
Well, I didn't put Barbados in my research. It was only Jamaica, St. Vincent, US, and Canada.
Yeah, so Barbados is a lot more strict.
And St. Lucia was the most strict out of those four countries.
But again, Canada was a lot more strict. Canada has moved and scaled back quite a bit since then. So when Canada started, your cultivation area, not just the area, even your whole farm, you had to have 2 layers of fencing, a dog in between it, and soft touch. You know what soft touch means? Soft touch means if you touch the fence, the police will be notified and will be there in under 10 minutes. That was the legislation when cannabis was passed in Canada. So they've scaled back then, because now they've weeded out from the industry. A lot of the persons who have seen it as, I can get into this and do this in some nefarious way. So they're now comfortable to say, we can scale back on a lot of this, because a lot of these other persons who may have had sinister intentions are not in the industry. It's now properly structured. So what I say to persons a lot is, this is like a war. If you understand infantry, there are 2 rules. Start low and move slow. Will we get to a point where we've relaxed a lot of these things? Probably. Will we get to a point where we can talk about recreational use openly? Possibly. But at this stage, when we still have all of these things that we need to make sure we tick the boxes on, we need to see, this is our industry. Will it look like this next year? Maybe not. But this is how we have to start. We start low and we move slow.
I'll take that Valentine's Day. Like, start low and move slow.
Alright, so as we come to a close, let
as for you, okay, hash, hash be something that
that's a cannabis product. Yes. So in the legislation, we refer to cannabis, which is the plant itself, your flower, your leaves, and then we refer to cannabis products, which is any derivative. So your hash is a cannabis product.
Alright, so closing, let me go to our guests first for closing statements, closing remarks.
Important conversation. Continue the conversation we're having, diving into the weeds, where we're taking different aspects of the cannabis specifically conversation, looking at folklore, we're looking at fact, we're looking at fiction, and we're looking at where St. Lucia fits in this regime. I would employ everybody who's interested in cannabis, not just in participating in the industry for commercial reasons, but for consumption reasons and just for general knowledge, because we have a lot of unlearning to do. We have been taught so many things, or we've just inherited so much knowledge from wherever we inherited from, and we treat it as gospel, and we have a lot of unlearning to do. So come and hear from these different schools of thoughts on the 28th of February, and diving into the weeds. It's a free event, Aquatic Center, Broadway Bay. Check out the RSA's page, rsa.govt.lc, and the socials, RSA Regulated Substances Authority on all major social platforms for more information. My closing thoughts.
I don't think I can do much better than that, but I think we have for many years sold ourselves short in terms of not doing our own ground. Take the time to understand it yourself. If you don't understand what you are doing, what you are saying, who you are, then somebody else is going to tell you. So for a long time, we have let persons tell us who, what, where, how. Do your own reading, do your own research, take the time. We're now in a society where everything is at your fingertips. you can get 2 or 3 different documents on something. Just spend the time. It is a lot more valuable to you than you think to have an understanding for all of the options that exist to you in this space. So if I leave here with one thing, it is to say to persons, you don't have to believe a word I've said this far. Everything I have said, you can do your own research on. You don't have to listen to what anybody has said. You can take the time yourself. You owe it to yourself to be able to say, this is that, I believe this, I believe this because of that. Not my parents said, not I just feel like, but I have some reason, some logic-based reason for me to say that. And for me, if you do that to yourself and you meet the requirements of being a good contributing person to society. So that's it.
And now, wine drinker, the greedy pig.
This is a really good wine. I definitely get this another for Valentine's Day. So my takeaway from this is 40 plus 14 is 28. Maybe the last day of February, maybe not. But Aquatic Center for, what's the name of it again?
Dive into the weeds.
Dive into the weeds. It was mistake, right? Again. We are born looking like our parents, but we die looking like our decisions. So this is a very interesting conversation, and it definitely opened up my eyes. I myself came with my preconceptions about the whole thing, and I cannot overemphasize the importance of research or figuring out your own facts. If you don't figure out where you're going, somebody will tell you where to go. So it is an integral part of our sovereignty. Me as somebody who delved into science my whole life, a big fan of everything, NASA, radiation, and not necessarily marijuana, but I'm definitely shifting my perspective on the ups as well as really finding what you will be considered a downs for me. And I would also like to say a special thank you to our 2 guests coming out tonight. And it's nice to see 2 intelligent, young, good-looking men leading the way in our country.
Round of applause.
Yeah. But we have finished that. We have 1 month. We made money to
Alright, so I want to thank everyone for coming. This has been a very riveting conversation, very educational conversation. I think we touched on a lot of things that the public and people that are not in the know probably had some misconceptions about or misunderstandings about. So, as always, thank you for joining us at Grown Folks Only Podcast. Peace.
Peace.
Like and subscribe.
Grown Folks Only Podcast. Culture, passion, you